So you guys are in for a treat today. One of my favorite people is going to be on the podcast. And the reason he's one of my favorite people is because no matter what you do, if you read his writing, if you watch his videos, if you're in his company, what you know about Tony Martignetti is that he cares about you. He cares about me. Everything that he puts out in the world just reeks of how much he wants your success, your inspiration, and your fulfillment. And that is why I want to talk to him today on the Mastering Midlife podcast. Officially, Tony is a trusted leadership advisor. He's an entrepreneur, idea generator, people connector. He brings together practical experience, formal training, and extreme curiosity to elevate leaders and equip them with the tools to navigate the change and unlock their true potential. Right? That's the official way we talk about him. He's been in the finance world. He's been in the business world. He's in the biotech world. So he comes from our corporate background in order to bring that stuff. It's really, really useful. He's also the host of the Virtual Campfire podcast, which I've been on, and it's really, really cool. And he's the author of this upcoming book, which I love the title because I talk about this all the time, Climbing the Right Mountain, Navigating the Journey to an Inspired Life. Tony, thank you for being here.
I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for having me on, Mark. I'm, with an intro like that, I can't, I have to be good.
So many of us coaches and leadership people love to hear ourselves talk. For me, I love being known as Yoda. Like that, I get off on that, right? But for me, every time I'm in your company and every time I watch what you do, your caring just comes through. Like you want my success as much as I do. And it's really, really clear. Where does that come from?
Well, it's funny. Well, I could say, it comes from my parents, and it's true. I mean, my parents were very caring people, and specifically, my mother had that warm, emotional, the empathy that really kind of exuded from every cell in her body. And I would say that's a starting point. Throughout all of my career, people used to always say, "There's something about me that really lights up a room and creates this warmth around people." And I used to always ignore that and say, like, yeah, okay, but I deal with finance. I deal with numbers. I'm a numbers guy.
I love the way you discount your gift, right? For me, it was, like you connect. I feel safe with you. I feel connected to you. And it's like, yeah. Those are soft, cold. You want that from a puppy, but I'm a businessman and I need to make money. What am I going to do with that? Right. So exactly. Now you walk into a room and it's what you do.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's really beautiful to be able to be in this space now where I feel more connected to who I am as a person than ever before. And as a human, really, because when it comes down to it, that's where my core has really now been revealed. My gifts have been revealed. There was a clue, and I'll just go into this small little tangent. When I was a child, I was an artistic child, very into drawings, paintings, things like that. And one of the things I used to always do is I used to draw rooms and environments, and each one of them would have a different feeling to it, an emotional state, which is really weird for a child to do that. But somehow I had this feeling that I wanted to create environments for people to come into and elicit something from them. I don't know why I didn't just paint dogs and, stick figures and what have you, but I just decided that was what I wanted to draw.
That's so cool. Yeah. That is an indication of like what you bring when you walk into a room. You change the environment.
Yeah. So.
For me, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a rabbi. I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to help people. Right. When I was really little, it's always a clue as to what's going to happen later in life. And then we get on these courses, right? We get, so I got on the course of being a drunk, an alcoholic, homeless, complete degenerate in life. So I spent the next decade or two kind of making up for that. I got to make money. I got to be respectable. I got to wear a suit. I got to dress nice. I got to do all these things, raise a family, be an upstanding guy, and throughout anything that was creative, artistic, caring. Like, I just had to kind of make up for that. And then we get onto this mountain. So you were artistic in that bent, but then you went into corporate life. How'd that happen?
Yeah. I mean, it was really came from a few moments along my childhood path, my path to becoming an adult, where people said, this is great what you do, but you got to find something that's going to, pay the bills. Think more practically. At first, the thought was architecture, because I loved architecture. And so I would translate my artistic ability into a path in architecture. But then I said, maybe there's something else that's a little more, around something more society driven, what
Practical,
society would want us to
sustainable.
accept. And I somehow landed on becoming a radiologist. So I went into pre-med. There is a connection. I mean, I had this feeling of always loving the sciences, but also, loving the structure of the body, the bones, very fascinated by how our bodies move and what have you. So pre-med, I went to college as a pre-med major. And after the first year or so, I was like, not so much. How can I pivot this into something else? I do love what I'm doing, but I don't love that this is going to be my life forever. So I switched into business. And then I made that pivot. And somehow I was able to connect the dots along that path and got into biotech as a field. After a career at Gillette, I worked in the blades and razors and many different divisions at Gillette. I eventually got into this place where I was working in the biotech industry, leveraging my background in finance and strategy, but also being in this space where we're working on rare diseases, lots of interesting biotech, industry endeavors, which was really fantastic. So I felt satisfied in the sense that it's purpose-driven business. I was making an impact, but very far disconnected from who I was at the core. Societally, I mean, from the outside, people would say, wow, that's great. You're doing, great work in a space that is in demand and, making an impact. You should be very proud of yourself.
So where'd the pivot to coaching? Like, so your book's called Climbing the Right Mountain, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things I talk about in my keynotes is, are you you're the Wile E. Coyote chasing the Roadrunner, right?
Yeah.
But is the Roadrunner really what you want? And are
Yeah.
you really a coyote? Like, have you been on automatic so long? Have you really figured out who you are? So you're talking about climbing the right mountain. Is your ladder up against the right house? That kind of
Exactly.
thing. How did that start to manifest that maybe you're on the wrong path?
Yeah. So let me dive into this a little bit further. So I was talking more on the surface level, to say like, yeah, this is great. I'm in a great industry, working with great companies. But ultimately, what I found was, I'm doing stuff that's dealing with numbers, dealing with, helping to drive businesses forward. But what I found was I was unfulfilled. I felt like there was more to be had. So during this period of time, I had a lot of what I called the curiosity conversations with people throughout the industry, starting with inside the company, but also outside of the company as well, to find out more about what these people did in their roles. Because I felt like there's got to be more to life than what I'm experiencing. There's got to be more to what I'm doing, because I had this itch to experience more than what I was. So I would have conversations with people to find out, hey, in program management or in business development or in different, places within the organizations, what is it about your job that lights you up? What is it about, the things that you do that, really creates something in you that fulfills you? And through those conversations,
How do people respond to that question?
well, first of all, people love talking about themselves, and that. That's one thing. They love these questions because it helps them to kind of, first of all, reflect on where they are and how they're feeling about their own experience. The fulfillment one is interesting because now I've come full circle. This is the question I'm asking a lot of people these days: is fulfillment has a very loaded feeling to it. Like fulfillment is
I
like,
actually felt it when you said it. I'm like, oh, I can't wait to see where does he go with that? Because okay, what lights you up? What does this? What fulfills you?
yeah,
And has anybody really considered that?
yeah. A lot of people, they have the wrong definition of what fulfillment is. And for them, it's like, yeah, for me, it's like, I'm able to, I have a nice house. I'm able to spend time with my family. I have, some people like, I'm making great progress in my career. I'm at the C level. Like there's certain things that are driven by, the what I call the external factors. But then I didn't ask this then, but now I ask is like, but how do you feel about your life? Like, how do you feel about
Yeah,
your
don't ask me.
experience
Don't
in
ask me
life?
that. I don't think about it. Don't ask me about that.
Yeah. Yeah. This is what I come back to now, which is like having honest conversations with yourself, asking yourself deeply, what is my experience in life right now? And how can I really check in with myself to say, am I enjoying my experience? That's my definition of fulfillment. It's not always going to be like beautiful and great, but you have to connect with your experience to see that you can find contentment in the moment. You can find satisfaction in the moment, but you also have to understand, what it is that you're striving for next. What is the thing that you're driven towards? Is it are you so hell bent on that next step in the ladder that it's the only thing that you're driving towards? Which was part of the reason why, and I'm coming back to my story, that during that time of, I'm unfulfilled, I don't feel like I've got a clear picture where I want to go, I just kept on moving forward and thinking like, if I get to that next place, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
Maybe,
Mine was
maybe.
my 386,000 commission check. When I get that 386,000 commission check, then I'll know I'm a good salesman, and then I'll relax.
Exactly.
And after I got the $386,000 commission check, the year turned over. I went back to zero. I was back in a panic.
I mean, it's really crazy when you think about it, because we also have this like in this day and age, especially where there's all the external images of what perfect looks like, and what the hashtag best life looks like. And so if you keep on striving to say, well, I can't be fulfilled if I don't have all those things that other people have. If I'm comparing myself to other people, then fulfillment is like a losing game. But again, that's where I come back to the definition. How do you define your fulfillment? How do you define what it is that you want, not based on what society wants for you?
For me, it was a long journey.
Yeah.
Because if you ask me, so Mark, what fulfills you? Well, I have fun doing this. Mark, no, what fulfills you? Well, this is going well in my life. Mark, what fulfills you?
Yeah.
Like, all right, Tony, actually, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I want to come back to, because there's an element of this that says, well, fulfillment is not an end game. There's not some place that you get to. It's like the old saying that it's not a place to, you don't arrive there eventually. It's a
No, I'm going
mindset.
to I have to interrupt you. So, just on this, because I want to talk about how smart I am on this particular topic.
Please.
If you go to Tony's website, which will be in the show notes, he has the Inspired Leader Manifesto. I love manifestos anyway, but I love the Inspired Leader Manifesto. And there'll be a link to it in the show notes. But he has number 5 and number 8 really stop me in my tracks. And this is why I interrupted you.
Go ahead.
Because number 5 is life is a perfect adventure, a game that cannot be won or lost, only played. Life is a perfect adventure, a game that cannot be won or lost, only played. And then you skip down to number 8. We are born to play an infinite game. Amateurs compete, professionals create. We are born to play an infinite game. Amateurs compete, professionals create. That stopped me in my tracks. And I wanted to stop you from talking because I wanted to get that into this podcast. That changes the way I look at everything. I already knew that. And when I read it on your manifesto, it stopped me in my tracks. And I'm like, holy shit, what a game-changing statement. So now you can talk about what you're talking about.
Well, it's so true. I mean, and first of all, just to say one thing about manifestos, the reason why I created it for myself. It's very selfish, because I need to remind myself of those things. you might hear it once, but you have to remind yourself on a repeated basis, this is why I do what I do. This is why I operate this way in the world. And they're powerful reminders that allows me to navigate the world in the way I do. So thinking about this whole journey to fulfillment, it's not a journey to an end game. It's about how you bring yourself into life. I think of Sean Achor as like, you know, you don't come to happiness if you think of happiness as being a place, to come from. If you're happy first, then success comes from that. Sorry for being a little mixed up on my talking, but the whole point is that
it's a place to come from.
Yeah, and I think that shift in perspective is what really a lot of people miss, is that you can't think like, oh, I'll get there, and that when I get there, it's going to be great. This is the whole concept that my book is kind of thinking about, is how people get to this top of this mountain thinking, oh, this is going to be great. Look at the view. And they realize all the things they sacrificed to get there, and then it's not that great. That it's not all that worth it. And then at the end of the day, this wasn't even my goal that I really wanted out of life. It was actually set by somebody else.
Yeah, the midlife dilemma. I made it, but oh shit, I'm not where I want to be. So now what? So for you, just make it personal. So for you, like this going into coaching, this changing careers is stupid. Like we have someone else paying our American Express, we have health insurance, and now we're going to go help people and see if we can make a living, right? That's
Absolutely.
crazy. So how did you come to this, and how did you make the leap?
Yeah. So I'm glad you kind of, finally get me back into my story. So I'm all over the place. So honestly, it was such a great journey in the biotech space, because I'm grateful for all the people and the impact. But ultimately, there was an element of just not feeling like I was living the life that I needed to live. And there were moments when I was working so hard to fulfill my mission, to keep on moving up that ladder, to the climbing that mountain, if you will, that ultimately I burned myself out. I had depression. I was just feeling really empty inside. I had the dark moments where I didn't really want to move on anymore. And, that for me was really, it's tough for me to even think about it now, because it's a
So hold on.
moment that,
So like everything's going okay.
yeah, on
The
the outside.
family's okay. The business, business is going okay. But that dark night of the soul comes anyway. That's midlife, man. That's that
Yeah.
whisper. And to sit with it is so uncomfortable. It's why we numb ourselves out. It's why we
Yeah.
Netflix and chill. It's why we plan vacation and buy a new car, right? So
Yeah.
for you to sit with that is really a powerful thing.
Yeah. And sometimes my addiction that I kind of dealt with was, instead of really kind of like numbing myself out with like the drugs and alcohol, which I had my fair amount of that as well. But the biggest one for me was just being addicted to doing more, just working harder. And my addiction to doing, I say, is my undoing. And what I found is that if I worked harder, then I will keep on moving towards the thing that will make me happy. And
Mine was being perfect and being everything to all people.
yeah, it's somewhat similar to my flavor. I mean, that's if I keep on working and keep on making these things come to life, and sometimes feeling like the martyr, suffering on behalf of everyone else.
It's powerful stuff, that martyr drug.
Yeah. And I came out of this moment and was able to kind of see the light. And this is not the moment that I really left biotech, but it was the moment that I started to see that there was another way. So slowly but surely, I started to dig out of that valley and moved towards seeing that there's different ways of operating. I started meditating. Saw therapists, all these other things that were helping, very little, but they helped to get me out of that low point. As I started to see clearer, I came to this moment inside of a biotech boardroom where I sat around, I was like, I'm making good money and all that, got into this place where I was like an executive, and I felt this moment where I was like, I don't think I can do this anymore. I saw these two executives who were, arguing about something that had nothing to do with anything important. 40 people sitting around a boardroom table, and well, in a big room, and everyone was kind of checked out, looking at their cell phones. And I said to myself, wow, these guys are arguing about like who's right and who's wrong, protecting their image. And I said, I cannot do this anymore. I can't collect a paycheck any longer and just show up. I feel like I'm wasting a life. I'm wasting my life. And in an industry where we save lives, this is not tolerable. So I decided that moment that I'm leaving this room and I'm going to change the room somehow. I don't know what I'm doing, and that's okay. All I know is that I need to start living. And I moved, I left the room. And that's what I did. I didn't have a plan. So it was scary, but so liberating at the same time to walk out of that room.
So you weren't quitting your job. You weren't changing your entire life. You just knew you were going to do something different.
I did. I quit my job. I did.
I love you. Yeah, I love you. That's what I do.
Yeah.
Like I tell people, please don't do what I do. I can't not do that kind of stuff. But you quit your job. Good for you.
Yeah, I quit my job because I decided that this is my moment where I need to really make something happen. I just can't do this any longer. It was not tolerable. So I decided that moment that something's going to happen. I didn't know how it was going to come to life, but coaching was something that I hadn't even really experienced a lot of. I only had a coach for a few months before then, and I just had a little taste of it. Something about it had lit up in me something that was like, oh, this is interesting. I think I could actually be really good at this. So I started exploring it. I would say, just to make a long story short, my journey had just begun at that point, right? Because I didn't realize what I didn't know about this beautiful field of coaching. And that's where I really dug in and found out who I was at the core, and started to unearth the stories that made me who I was throughout all of my career, and also hid all of the things that were my gifts underneath. So that's really what got me into coaching. There's an element of showing up every day and just seeing how I can create more for people and seeing what people need and helping them to move forward powerfully through those conversations. And that's what really lights me up. I just love being with people and seeing what they, what's hiding underneath them that I can help to unearth.
There's a wonderful blue collar quality of effort and consistency that comes around your work, together with the inspiration and follow your bliss and your dreams and your all that stuff. There's such a nice balance between the two. It's not, just go off into the sunset and leave your family and do this. There's some realism to that, and it shows in your work.
Yeah, and I think I've made a lot of mistakes along my path, but also I think the reason why
I sold Tesla and Apple to pay for this whole journey, so I know about those mistakes.
Yeah, I think the best thing about it though is that I really have seen that when you get out of that comfort zone, where you get uncomfortable, when you start to really see that those moments when you're like trying new things and experimenting, even with the idea that uncertainty is okay. It's okay to not know what's going to work, what's not going to work, because when they do work, it's so beautiful, and when it doesn't work, it's great learning. And that's what I love about the whole experience that I've been on, especially the past few years. I've learned more in the past few years than I've learned, I think, in a lifetime.
Right. And I say that every year now. I've learned more in the last year than I have in the previous 58. Like, oh my God. And that just every year. So let's just I want to touch on one more subject about this whole transition thing. One of my shticks when I talk about my clientele is, I'm a coach, and when people hear coach, they're like, oh, follow your bliss, quit your job, go weave baskets in Bermuda if that's what your heart's desire.
Yeah.
what I say is my clients would give me the middle finger if I said that. They need to pay for college for their kids, right? They
Yeah,
have elderly parents, they have bills, they have responsibilities, and oh, by the way, they like what they do. They just don't want the stress. They want a different, like they
exactly.
don't want to be killed every day by what they do. They don't want their soul to be crushed. So they want to somehow be able to do that. So when you're talking about being inspired, when you're talking about finding fulfillment and finding your soul, it's
Yeah,
not flushing down everything you built, right? Talk about
absolutely.
that.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned this because there's an element of this which is like, oh, like if some company hires me to bring, to work with their people, am I gonna like be like the poison that brings that you come in and then you're gonna make these people want to leave? No, like I love being able to bring people, into their work more powerfully. That's what inspired purpose means. It's connecting with what really makes you come alive in that day, and doing more of that. I think ultimately what's happening is a lot of people lose that connection with what they got into that line of work in the first place, and so they just need a little bit of like that, to be reignited into that purpose, and to see that inspiration. It's something that you have inside of you. You just need someone to help to get you thinking about it again and get reignited into that purpose, in that inspiration again. Um, I'm going to say something a little bit out there, but I'll say it. I see inspiration as this like it's a communication with your soul's purpose.
Mm.
And so it's like the conduit that you need. And when you look for that source of inspiration, that's when you're starting to get more connected with that purpose that you're meant to be doing in the world. And if that means doing more work, but doing it different, the work that you're doing right now, but doing it differently, showing up differently, fantastic. If it means doing something completely different, then fantastic. um, what I've often tell people too is if there's something that like you're not connecting with a hobby or something that you want to create outside of your work, like try experimenting, do some small bets, play at the coffee house at night, do some time, playing guitar. If that's something that you want to be a rock and roll singer someday, start small, do that. And that will bring you more powerfully into your
Play on the
day
weekends,
job.
keep your health insurance.
Yeah, keep your health insurance. Don't just leave the boardroom.
And it's so interesting. When I took my first coaching course when I was still a sales guy, it was with Alan Cohen, who
Yeah.
wrote "Are You as Happy as Your Dog" and "Relax into Wealth," a bunch of great books. And he asked this question. He says, "Put sticky notes all around." And he said, "My soul is calling me to blank, or my spirit is calling me to blank." And I'm like,
Mm.
what? Spirit is calling me to eat chocolate chip cookies. Spirit is calling me to, watch porn. I don't know. Like
Yeah.
that. And so I had put it all around my apartment for days and days. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't get any of this. Like I'm a sales guy. I'm taking care of my family. And
Yeah.
finally it came out. One morning I woke up and it was like, my soul is calling me to connect. Like that's
Yeah.
my gift. Like that, when you talk about your soul, your essence, who you
Yeah.
are, that seems to be part of who I am, to connect. And then I started looking at my life and why I was successful as a sales guy and all that, even though I'm kind of an introvert, I connect with people. And
Mm.
the next day I went to work and I realized, what am I going to do with this? And I said, oh, I can lean on that gift, that soul purpose as a sales guy. And I went into work as a sales guy with the express purpose of connecting with the customers, my prospects, connecting with the people that I work with, connecting all day. And then later on, when I finally figured out to go become a coach, my first 6 clients were my customers in the tech industry. They were the CIOs and the executives that I worked with, and they became my first clients. And they said, we didn't talk about business all the time. You talked about me. You cared about me. So it was
Yeah.
really interesting transition. So you can bring it into your world.
Yeah. I love that. That's such a great reminder too. It's like, it's not about like creating this element of, pure business. Business at its core is conversations, it's connection. And when you kind of take that all back into, how are you connecting with people? That's what this is all about, right? Um, Behind everything is people.
Yeah,
So
it's not numbers. It is totally people. You're selling to people. Your people are selling. You're working with people. Everything's all about people.
mm,
So when does the book come out? Climbing the Right Mountain, navigating the journey to an inspired life.
it's slated for June 1st. So
Oh, so it is soon. So the manuscript is there. Oh, that's
yes,
so exciting. I'm thrilled. I can't wait to see the book and help you support it. You're such incredible guy. Where can people find out more about what you're doing?
the best place for to find me is inspiredpurposecoach.com. And if you want to find out more about my show, it's also there. There's a link to the podcast. It's Virtual Campfire. And you'll find some interesting people there, yourself included.
You can find me on there.
Yes, exactly. And I'm also on all the social media channels. So feel free to find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever there's channels, you'll find me.
All those links will be in the show notes, so people don't have to worry about that. They can find it easily. Tony, thank you for spending time with me. Thank you for being who you are.
Thank you so much. This has been such an enjoyable time, and I really appreciate I'm honored to be here.
That's awesome. That's so reverential. I love it. To everybody else, I appreciate your time and attention more than you know. I love you. Have a great rest of the day.